Hey everybody, welcome back to day 3 of Brick Breaker. Where were we yesterday? I'm going to share my screen. There's a few people that I have to look over their code for assignment 2, so I'll do that today. And don't worry, there's no specific due date for assignment 2. Work on it as you go along here, as long as it's handed in by the end of the year. I'm okay with that. Just don't get far behind, right? Be panicking on the last few days. Not worth. Okay, so let me share my screen. And here's where we were at yesterday. Let me just move this over to my other monitor so it's not as... There. Okay, so yesterday we came up with a program where we just made a Box 2D project and kept all the standard stuff in there. We made a world with no gravity. We actually put in four walls. And then we started making our own variable types, our own objects, we're calling them, because they're more than variables. They can, obviously they have this function when we make them that we can add all kinds of stuff to it. And not only that, we can give it variables that we can use. We can give it functions, and so it's much more than a variable. It's called a structure, or a class in C++ is the other word you could use. They both do the same thing. And so we made one for our ball, and we just borrowed all the Box 2D stuff, added a little bit of our own stuff to it, and that was our circle, and then we made a paddle too, right? So again, we just borrowed mostly all of our SFML and Box 2D stuff. We are going to eventually come in and change this and put these commands somewhere else. And right now we can't change the color or any kind of SFML stuff about our about the things that we made yet. And that's because all our drawing is relying on this command here, which is called display world. Function that simulates physics, which is fine. Renders shape. So this is what's drawing everything for us right now. We're going to end up, I guess, stealing this and putting it in our code eventually so that we don't actually have to use the display world command anymore. That will be coming up soon, I guess. Alright, so let's see what we got so far. I posted this in the Google Classroom as a zip file if you got confused yesterday, just because there's a lot of we did do a lot of covered a lot of ground there. It's easy to make little mistakes and stuff, but try to go through my video so you can kind of get a sense of what is actually going on, why we're doing what we're doing, and how it's coming together to make this right now. I did want to add a collision function to my ball so that I could see where it's hitting the paddle today, and then maybe get it to bounce off left or right depending on where it hits. So let's start that today. To make another function inside of my ball structure or object here, I'm just going to go down here and make one. And I'll call it check collision. And it doesn't have a type yet, so for now I'll just make it void, which means it doesn't return anything. But check collision actually usually returns true or false, right? So it would probably be prudent to make this function return true or false by writing bool there. So this is my ball. The other thing I want to do is I want to check a collision between a paddle. So if I go, I'm just going to steal the code from physics.h for check collision, right? And here's a function that checks the collision between two blocks. So I'm going to take this code like that. All right. And I'm going to hit copy. And that's from physics.h. And then inside my ball check collision code, I'm going to paste it. And then just replace what I need. So it does return true and does return false. Goes through some box2D stuff and checks. If I run this, you'll see that it doesn't know what B1 is and it doesn't know what B2 is. And that's because the check collision function was passed in 2 blocks. I don't want to pass it in 2 blocks, actually. I'll show you what I want to do. Let's run it and you'll see that it crashes. Yeah, B1 and B2 don't exist, shockingly. Okay, so I'll replace B1 with the word body because that's the body that I'm keeping track of for my actual ball. So it's going to check that. If I see any other B1s, no. B2 I don't have yet, but I'm actually going to pass this thing a paddle variable. Okay, so I'll just call it P1. And let's run it and see what the error is there. It says it's never heard of paddle. Okay. There's a reason for that. It's because I didn't include it here. So I'm going to include it there. And we're going to run into another issue. Paddle.cpp, right? Let's see if that's okay. Should be fine. Should now like add all this code for paddle here.
Bless you.
Bless you. Yep. Somebody's watching O Canada videos here. Is that O Canada?
Yeah.
Yeah? That's Petey. He's learning something today.
I'm learning nothing.
Yeah. Okay, so I included paddle.cpp. Let's see what happens. It should give me a message that says, first of all, it doesn't know what B2 is, that's fine. But it says redefinition of paddle. So it's telling me I actually pulled paddle in twice, and I did. I pulled it in here, right? And then I pulled it in my main as well. And remember, all this include does is just copies and pastes code. So it actually, like, when I include ball now, it'll copy and paste all this ball code. But in the ball code, it'll paste this as well, the paddle. And then it'll go down and paste the paddle again. So it calls it twice. And you end up kind of getting in this circular thing where, like, where do I call this paddle so that everyone knows what it is? But at the same time, I'm not calling it like over and over again. And the best way to do it is to do something like this at the top of your program. It's called a header guard, and you can see I've done it with my physics.h because we've also called physics.h a whole bunch of times here in ball, here in paddle, and here in main, and it didn't give us that problem. And the reason why it didn't give us that problem is because I've made this little like define variable where it defines physics.h once, and then this basically says if I've never seen the word physics.h before, define it. And then if you go all the way to the bottom of your code, you'll see that like hashtag endif, and then you can see a physics.h. So it's basically protecting you from calling your code more than once. It's basically saying only copy this code if it's never been copied before. So I'm just going to put that in the front of my paddle code as well. You can give it any word you want. I did capital physics_h because I knew it wouldn't be a variable I would ever call or use. Under paddle here, it's always the first thing you put in your files. So you write if ndef, if not defined, and then I'll give it a word like paddle _h or something. Oops, it copied the ndef there for me. So I'm actually gonna just paste that at the very bottom of my file, like that. And then here I'm going to define it, which, okay, and I'll just call this, give this myself a little message that this is a guard for calling things more than once. So if it's not defined, if you've never seen the word paddle underscore H, define it. It just defines it in your compiler or something. And then you have to have an end if at the end. So hopefully that will protect us from redefinitions. And yes, it did. The only other issue now is it's never heard of B2. Okay? Hopefully that makes sense. We're going through like a lot of advanced features here for C++, but even if you don't entirely get what it's doing, it's nice that you've seen it before. So if you look in other files, like if I open up an SFML file, you'll probably see something like this at the top. Let me see if I can open one. C++. Where's my dev folder here? Dev, SFML, source, that's where all the code is. Let's open any random file, circleshape.h, I'll try to find. Is there .h? They do HPP. But, hold on a sec. I don't want source actually. SFML. I want to include. Okay. Graphics, circle shape, open. See that? There it is. Okay. It's got that little guard in there, and every file will, because SFML, everything's going to be talking to everything, and everything's going to be calling each other, and you'll just end up multiply declaring every single file, and never being able to run your code. So. There you go. All right. Let's fix the other error here. That it doesn't know what B2 is. And the reason why is because I used to pass it 2 blocks, a B1 and a B2. But I actually want to check the collision between my body. So I've replaced that with body there. And I want to check the collision between the paddle. So can I write P1 here? No. Because P1, it's... Whoa, look at that error message. It's still going, I think. P1 is a paddle, and it doesn't... Box2D doesn't know what a paddle is. But every paddle has a body right here, has a variable. So if I want, I can write P1.body. And then it should run. And it does. We could test it if we want. Because it's a function attached to our ball code, we can go anywhere in our game loop, I guess, here. And for now, I'll just cout. Cout, and I'll go B1 dot, you can see the function I've created for my ball. So I can check collision. It's asking for a paddle, which I have. So I enter P1 there, and hit end line like that. And you can see it's 0 all the way there, and hopefully when I hit the paddle, it'll change to 1, and we'll know it's hitting. Yep, I saw a little 1 flicker there. You probably won't see it on my screen. But hopefully, if you get yours working, you can see that it does actually know that when it's hitting. Okay. There's one other thing we should probably do for efficiency reasons, and that is put an ampersand in front of our paddle. Okay. Why would you do that? Why would you pass it the memory address instead of the actual? It still works fine. It does everything fine. The reason is, let me get rid of this cout for a second here. Let's see out the size of tells you how big something is in bytes or whatever of P1. Okay? It's 288 bytes. So, I mean, that seems small, and it is, but let's see if it'll let us do the size of the memory address of P1. What if I put ampersand sign? Will it crash? No, it doesn't crash. See how it's 4 bytes? So if I pass something the memory address, I'm passing it all the information my function needs. I'm just passing it something a lot smaller than the actual object itself. And so 288 is how many times bigger than 4? 288 divided by 4. I guess I could have done that in my head. 72 times bigger, right? So if I'm calling tons of functions, it's going to be beneficial for me to just be passing everything as small little memory address objects instead of the actual object itself. And the reason why is because when you make a function, it actually, anything you pass it makes copies of. So every time I call check collision, it'll make a copy of paddle 1, which is 288 bytes, and it'll have to do it every frame. And if I have lots of different objects that I'm copying, it's makes your program more memory intensive, right? So it's good habit to just pass anything bigger than an int or a float as a memory address. The only issue is you run the risk of this function being able to change your paddle inside of it. Sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes you want the function to be able to change it. If you don't want the function to be able to change your paddle, you just write the word const in front of it. So I'll leave that const because I don't think a check collision function has any business changing anything about my paddle. So now if I go, if I try to write p1.setVelocity or something, it'll crash my program if I have that const in there, which is a good thing. I don't want my paddle to get changed by this function. Okay. So you're saying, well, I'm saving a few bytes of memory or something, big deal, but I don't know if you've ever tried to open up. Here's a notorious company that does this, Adobe Photoshop. Okay, if you've ever used Adobe Photoshop, the program basically has been doing the same thing for 20 years. I used it when I was in high school. The only difference is, and there's hardly any difference between now and 20 years ago, except the computers that we're using now are probably literally 500 times faster than the computer I was using. But Adobe Photoshop takes like 10 minutes to open on any computer. And when I was in high school using it, it took like 20 seconds to open. So why is that? If computers are 500 times faster, the program does the same thing. Why the heck would it take a brand new top-of-the-line computer like 5 minutes to open some software? It's because people aren't coding efficiently, right? People aren't taking into account little small improvements like this. And then over time, the program just becomes so bloated and full of little leaks and all kinds of issues that you end up with something like, Adobe Photoshop. I like to pick on Adobe, but there you go. Okay, so there we go. We got our collision code, and it works. What do we want to do with it, though? I thought today our goal would be to get the ball to bounce off the paddle and then bounce off depending on what side, like in a real Brick Breaker game. Right now it just hits and bounces. Let's see if we can work it out so that we can get it to bounce off here or here. Okay. So let me get my little drawing pad out here. We'll come up with a strategy. something called OneNote. There we go. All right, so see if it'll let me draw. Okay. Here's my paddle. Okay. And what I want to do is kind of, let's say this is 0. I think my paddle is 100 wide. Let me just check quickly. Under main, I made the paddle. And yeah, it's 100 pixels wide right there. So, and that could change, right? You could add a power up. Maybe eventually that will become a variable where you make your paddle wider or shorter. That's another good reason to make everything in its own little file, so that when you have little power ups falling down and you touch them, you can just add the code to your paddle file and not have to like go through your whole main to figure out where to shrink your paddle. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to basically find out in the X direction when the ball hits, right? I basically just want to see how far I am away from the center of the paddle. If I'm 50 away, then I'll try to give it a good bounce that way. And, you know, if I'm, oh, this little pen is so weird. And if I'm minus 50 away, I'll want to try to bounce it that way. And if I'm 0 away, right, I'll want to bounce it straight up. Okay, so basically I just want to try to find the distance between the center of my paddle and the center of my ball, and then sort of come up with some sort of factor, like, you know, to figure out how much of an angle I want to bounce it at. So start printing some stuff on the screen and see what it's going to spit out for us. So here in my main, I'm going to actually check for a collision. If B1, check collision, it's looking for a paddle, P1. You don't have to write if it's equal true, it assumes that's what you're looking for. If you do have a collision, then for now, right now, I'm just going to see out the position of both. So I'm going to go B1 dot, can I do get position? Not right now. Maybe I can. Let me just see. Get position dot X. I don't think right now that my SFML is keeping track of its position right now. It just says 0, yeah. That's no good. And it has to do with something I talked about that we're going to change later on here. We got to change this kind of stuff here and actually get rid of this altogether, maybe. Should we do that today? Maybe we'll do that tomorrow. For now, if we want the position, maybe we just... How does it get position in physics? Let's look. Get position. Oh, it just uses a box2d command called get position. Interesting. Just thinking if I want to do this today or not. Yeah, b1.body.getPosition. I'm just thinking maybe because we did give our ball all the properties of a circle shape, and right now it's not really like drawing. It's not really utilizing any of that. So what I want to do is let's go to our ball code, and we're just going to kind of fix that issue. Okay. The other thing is we're going to get away from using display world as well. Okay? Or else we're going to run into some weird issues. Does this make sense to you? Yeah. Okay. We're actually going to steal some code out of here, though. We're going to steal this code. Okay, so we're going to steal this line of code, which steps our world through 1/60th of a second. And then we're going to steal these 3 lines of code so that our shape is getting updated from the Box 2D world. I think that will work fine. Body.getPosition, sure. Okay. Will I need to pass it a world? Yes, I will. But other than that, I should be okay. Maybe I won't even need to pass it a world. I don't think I will. Okay. Let's go. The first thing we'll do is get rid of this. Okay? Go to your main and get rid of physics.displayWorld. You'll see your program will just be a blank screen because nothing's getting drawn, right? But that's fine. Then we're going to borrow this line of code here, which is called world.step. It's in the display world. So this steps our physics world through 1/60th of a second. And if I run that, it still won't draw anything, but it'll actually run all the physics in the background. So it'll have all the shapes in memory, and they'll all be like actually moving and doing stuff. But we just haven't drawn anything yet, so it doesn't really, you don't really see anything. Okay, it's fine. Kadoosh. And then what we'll do to get our ball going is we don't need this anymore. Okay. Right? And we still want to set the origin, the position, and the fill color, but we want to set it on. We want to set it on the circle shape we make, and it's kind of weird in C++. If you don't know what the person's going to name it, right? We named it B1, but we can't write B1, right? And B1 and B1. It's a chicken and an egg thing. You don't know what the person's going to call their circle shape, so you can't like guess what the name is going to be and write B1 here. And so C++ has come up with this word. It's called this, and it says whatever the person names their function, this will give me the name of it. It's a weird, kind of funny word to choose, but I guess it kind of makes sense, you know. If I call my ball 0, then if it sees the word this, it'll know to call it ball 0. Okay. So that's good. And we don't need this line either. That had to do with the display world. And so this gets called in the constructor, right? And so now it will draw a ball, I think, but just once, and it won't move it. Oh, it doesn't even write it on the screen. Sad. Oh, it's because I don't have any draw commands. So let's fix that as well. Okay. Changed. How am I going to draw the ball? I guess what I'll do is I'll draw it in this update position command, because this update position command is it's getting called every frame, so it's a good, I can put it in here along with anything else I want. So what am I going to put in here? I have to basically go to physics.h, right? And I'm just going to grab these 3 lines of code. These are the lines of code that set the position of your shape to whatever it finds in the Box2D body. So let me copy those. They're from the display world command. And I guess I'll just put them here. But I can't, but again, I can't use the word shape. I have to use the word this. And I can't use the word shape because it doesn't know what I'm going to name my thing. I can't use the word this. And here I can't use the word shape either. So that should be good. So basically, I'll come back to this in a second, this code, but what's happening is, where's my picture here? Box2D isn't drawing anything. Box2D is just crunching numbers, okay? It only knows like positions and velocities. Positions, velocities. All it thinks about is positions and velocities of stuff. It has no idea how to draw anything. So all it's doing is, it's basically just keeping track of every body in your world, right? And finding out, so it's creating a world and it's throwing bodies in there, and then every 60 times a second it's figuring out if they're hitting and where they are and stuff, but it's not doing it visually. It's doing it completely computationally, which is fine for us because we have a way to draw things. We have used SFML in grade 11, so we're really good at drawing. So SFML comes along and it kind of just pulls these positions and velocities every 60 times a second. And it says, hey, Box2D, where's this thing going to be and how fast is it going? And Box2D says, oh, it's going this fast. Or as a matter of fact, Box2D only tells SFML where it is, right? Because SFML doesn't care about velocities. So SFML is just drawing. And so that's what's going on. We're trying to like marry these two together, and it's a kind of a tricky thing to do, right? And that's why we're, especially when we start making our own little variables and stuff. So that's our whole goal here in these 3 lines of code, is to say my circle shape, set its position to whatever its Box2D body is. And it does some conversion. And set its rotation too. Okay. You'll see that this won't run because it doesn't know what render is. So let me see here. If I try to run this, my update position won't work. Yeah, never heard of render. Okay, well let's pass it a render window. Render window, I'll type the word render. Okay, so the only update we have to make then for our update position is we have to pass it the name of our window. We have a render window here. We could pass it the word window. So let's write window in here for ball 1. Window. That's what it's looking for now. You'll see there's a small issue with that. Yeah, it's complaining because we didn't put const render window with the ampersand sign in front of it, right? It's complaining because it's like, and actually we're just going to put an ampersand sign in front of it. Is that right? Because if we're going to draw to our window, we have to be able to change our window, right? And that's why that ampersand sign needs to be there. See if that gets rid of our error message. Hey, it does. There we go. Why the heck didn't it draw our ball? That's a good question. One I don't really have the answer to right now. I think it's because I updated my position before I cleared my window. And that's why that shoot has occurred. Nope. Boo. Boo. Let me put this world step like maybe before the clear. Goody, 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 goody. I don't see the ball. I wonder why. Seems like everything should be okay. Render window. Good. Render dot draw. Draw the ball. And it should be okay. What am I missing? Display world looks good. It doesn't. Let me see out v1 dot get position. Let's see if that works now. Maybe I'll just see out the x position of the thing. It definitely knows the ball is bouncing and moving around now. That's good, right? Just using the sfml command for get position. So it knows there's something in there, it's just not drawing it. As for why that is, I'm a little bit stumped. Set position, set origin, set color. We only do that once, so that's fine. We set its velocity in our update position command. We set its position, we set its rotation, and we draw it.